Welcome back, and in this segment we will be looking into the Grand Museum's conservation department, and we're happy to have with us Ms. Akiko Nishisaka and Dr. Mei Ishii. Dr. Akiko is in the conservation planning, is the conservation planning deputy project manager, while Dr. Mei is the textile artifacts expert. Good afternoon and welcome with us.
Good afternoon, Dr. Akiko, Dr. Mei. Pleasure having you with us. And perhaps I would start by asking you, Mrs. Akiko, about your role here, as you are the conservation planning deputy project manager at the Grand Egyptian Museum. Would you tell us more about your work here?
Okay, our project name is Grand Egyptian Museum Joint Conservation Project. So we do the actual conservation with Egyptian colleagues from the conservation center, and now we are doing 72 selected objects, including some really treasures from King Tut collections, and hoping that will accelerate the soft opening of the gem.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Dr. Mei?
I'm a textile conservator, and my role is to conserve the 57 textile artifacts that we have a contract between GEMCC and the Japan JICA organization.
Doctor, the treasures of King Tutankhamen, a lot of it has been transferred already, and one of the things that were talked about was the presence of an armor of the king, and there were talks about it that maybe it might have been used. So to what extent is that true? Have you done the restorations on the armor?
No, the armor is not part of
your collection. What about the garments of the king? Because I understand they are linen, and that's fragile. How do you treat the linen collection?
The 5 Tutankhamen tunics are part of the JICA contract, and we are working on the documentation, fiber analysis, textile analysis, and the construction of these textiles, and I'm also studying the degradation of the textiles, and we hope to mount these textiles in a good condition so that a lot of people can see them in a better light.
Okay. Mrs. Akiko, the Grand Egyptian Museum Joint Conservation Project, GEM-JC, was established in May 2016. What are the objectives of it?
Okay. There are so many objects that need to be documented, transported, and conserved for the display in the GEM. So we are only dealing with 72 objects as a joint conservation project, but hoping all the procedures will be employed in the future for the other objects other than the 72 target objects we are working on. It can be used in the transportation and conservation of all the objects in the future for the gem.
Now, Doctor, I understand that recently a wheel of King Tutankhamen has been moved to the museum together with also the head of and the funerary bed, actually, of the goddess Weret. So can you tell us a bit about that, and have you started working on it in terms of conservation or not yet?
Yes, all the 5 chariots and the 3 ritual beds from the Tahrir has been transported to the conservation center now, and we've been documenting this, and now it's under analysis, scientific analysis. What is the materials used, and we are deciding which kind of procedures, conservation treatment we should do, and hopefully it will be on display on time.
Okay. Through this experience, GEMCC conservation specialists have enhanced their skills. What are the skills that you were keen to transfer to the staff here at GEM?
I think the most needed technique skills were the packing and transportation technique, because some objects are really fragile and sometimes it's very heavy, so it needs special treatment, special skills to pack and transport these fragile objects. But in terms of the conservation skills, I think already the staff in the conservation center are really in a good level already. So what we are doing is like introducing some new materials and techniques, and we are also choosing these techniques together with the Egyptian side.
Dr. Mia, I understand that actually you have an organic conservation department here at the museum. So would you tell us about it? And so far, what type of organic material you do have? Like we know there is wood, there are the textiles. What other materials you're working on as well?
I work with the Organics Lab headed by Dr. Iman Nagati, and she has a wonderful team of very young and very capable and technically advanced team of organic conservators. And normal days, they work on baskets, they work on ivory, they work on some small wooden artifacts. But with me, one of the issues that I was called in was that in Egypt there are very, very few textile specialists. So mainly we are working on the textiles together.
Yes. If you could tell us about how early were textiles used in Egypt?
I think you have to ask a textile historian for that. But some of the ancient ones which are surviving at least go back to 5000 BC, which you can see in the Textile Museum, some examples in Egypt.
Now, is it only the treasures of King Tutankhamun that you're working on, or are you working on other objects as well?
We are working on the textiles and wooden object of that King Tut, but also we are working on Old Kingdom wall paintings and Old Kingdom stone reliefs, which is really marvelous pieces which should be displayed in the gem.
Okay, what are the challenges or difficulties that face you here in your work?
I think the largest challenge is for this size of museum and for the importance of the collection is to really build up our skills together and getting our knowledges together to do a very good job, an excellent job to meet the requirements for the visitors, probably from around the world. To keep a high standard, I would say.
Okay, what about you?
It is sometimes technically challenging especially to transport very fragile object which never been touched for many years by the conservators. So we do a lot of investigation, preparation in order to do the safe transportation.
Now, for the textiles in ancient Egypt, we had, of course, mainly the linen. But are there any other type of textiles that will be exhibited dating maybe to later eras of the pharaonic dynasties?
No.
Or is it mainly linen?
Yes, all the textiles are made of linen, flax.
Yes. What about the colors? Because I understand that the ancient Egyptian used natural colors. So how do you preserve that? And if you decide to enhance the colors, how is that done?
The colors we see on Tutankhamen now is brown, white, of course, for linen, and blue. And if we see very closely and very carefully, I think we can pick up some colors like green and maybe yellow. So those are the color palette of the ancient Egyptians. And for the dyes, we haven't done any dye analysis, but from other works that researchers have done, we think that they may have used madder for red and woad for blue and yellow, maybe safflower. We don't know, but we would like to know.
Okay. Ms. Akiko, what are the artifacts that you're working on now?
We are working on, in the wood lab, the ritual bed and the chariot. And also in the Egyptian Museum, we still have pieces, wall paintings from the Dahshur area, which been excavated in the 19th century and never been really exhibited. So that will be a really new piece in the gem.
Now I understand also that you're holding training courses for the staff. So would you tell us about that experience, please?
We have actually started our training course in 2007. So it is our 11th year for working with the Egyptian colleagues and the training for the opening of the Grand Museum. We've worked on nearly all disciplines in conservation, from wooden artifacts, from ceramics, from papyrus, for textiles, and also about conservation science, how we analyze objects, and also health and safety issues, and also preventive conservation. Preventive conservation is something that we try to prevent the decay of objects before it happens. So how to control the light, how to control the environment. Those kind of trainings have been implemented for 11 years, and about 1,000 conservators have received this training.
Okay. Workshops are held here to transfer certain skills to Egyptian staff. What are these workshops about? The workshops that are held here in GEM?
There are too many topics we did, like how many courses? 100, over 100, divided into different courses. So starting from photography, what else? Photography, analysis, conservation, health and safety, and all kind of things. And it was amazing. There were many young, very talented conservators, but they didn't have a lot of experience in the beginning. But it's been 10 years now. They are over 30s and becoming junior conservators. They can do their work, and really they will be the treasure for Egypt, I guess.
Now, behind us, all the way in the background, we have the colossal statue of King Ramses II, and it was stored elsewhere, but months ago it was moved here. Now, this statue, did it need any conservation and working upon before it was placed in the atrium of the museum, or was it just placed here the way it was stored, and still there be more restoration work on it before the soft opening?
Actually, we were not that much involved in the Ramses II statue.
Yeah.
So what we've been seeing is they made some protection before moving, and after that they were cleaning the surfaces, and it looks nice.
Yeah. So
And what are the materials restorers work or use in order to they use in restoring their pieces? What are the materials that you use?
Well, there are many kinds of materials that we use, but the primal thing is that we use materials which are safe to the objects and which are long-lasting and which are tested by international conservation institutes, that we meet a standard of an international level. So for adhesives like glue, for paper, for any kind of materials, we select from merchandises, but they are all tested and we know what we're using.
Now, more than 112 objects were brought from the Luxor Museum here to the Grand Egyptian Museum. Have you worked on any of these objects that were brought from Luxor to the conservatory here?
Yes, actually, our target object, 72 target object, included one very nice chariot from Luxor. It's been just transported to the conservation center in April, beginning of the April. We have done a lot of documentation, first aid in the Luxor Museum, and now it's safely arrived, and now we are planning for the future conservation.
The artifacts that are being restored, they were chosen according to certain criteria. What were these criteria?
Yeah, to be honest, we have chosen something related to textile, wood, and wall paintings and stone only. That's because there are so many in the collection, stone, wood, and textile, and also sometimes they are very fragile. And also according to the capacity of the Japanese experts. We have a lot of wood and textile in Japan as well, and we have very experienced conservators working abroad in the wall painting conservation. I think that are the reasons that we have chosen these three textile, wood, and wall paintings for conservation.
Well, during our interview, you've mentioned that actually now it's almost been 10 to 11 years of training the staff here. So are you going back and forth between Egypt and Japan, or are you living here in Egypt? And tell me about your experience here.
I was going back and forth in the beginning, but now from before 3 years, I'm resident here. I'm so happy to see all the what is going on in the present time.
What about you, Doctor?
I have my permanent job in Japan. I teach in Saga University, Museum Studies and Conservation. So I come every 3 or 4 months for 2 weeks. So in a year, I come about 3 or 4 times.
Okay, I want to ask you what kind of knowledge or experience that you would like to transfer here to the workers working at the Egyptian Museum, the Grand Egyptian Museum, not only in restoration, but in general, because I think that you have experience in dealing with this, and perhaps one of your tasks is to transfer this experience through the GEM Japanese partnership.
One of the good things that the Japanese do is teamwork, probably.
Yes.
And in conservation, we need a lot of teamwork.
True.
Moving the objects, conserving things, even picking an object up, we need teamwork. So that is something that we have emphasized and encouraged, and we enjoy to do. So we have a teamwork with Egyptians and Japanese. So that's something that we're trying to transfer.
Now, the museum here is different than the Egyptian Museum of Antiquities, especially the conservation department, where I understand there are more than 17 departments, each related to a different thing. So would you tell us about how the system works and the type of departments you have? And the thing is, would everyone work on everything, or is it more specialized?
Yes, it is specialized according to the materials, but sometimes one object is made from metal and wood and including many materials, so it cannot be clearly divided into the system of the lab. But so they have to know a lot of things, not only metal, not only about textile. So I think that's what they are doing now in the conservation center.
Okay. What about the transportation of the last chariot in bed from the Egyptian Museum in Al Tahrir Square? Would you tell us about the special preparations for that event?
Special preparations. First of all, we brought many materials from Japan, which is very high in quality and good for the conservation purpose, like non-acid papers or the conservation grade forms and things like that. So it was like 80% of the project is like preparation, I guess, planning and preparation. And then the actual work, it was like only 2 weeks in the site. But yes, we did a lot of preparation, like investigation in the in situ, like 3D scanning or the X-ray radiography, like we do for the humans. We did the X-ray radiography for the object. A lot of preparation.
Now, have you been to definitely you must have been to the Egyptian Museum of Antiquities in Tahrir Square. Now, have you worked on any of its pieces or looked at it, and can you tell us the difference when it comes to the conservation department there and here? The old museum, the one in Tahrir.
Well, the conservation department in the Egyptian Museum is very good. So there are some similarities and differences, but overall the approach is the same. Maybe the difference for first sight might be the facilities, because the facilities in the GEMCC are it's really world quality. Whereas in the conservation department in the Egyptian Museum is quite basic, but the work they do, as with manual skills and the work ethics, is the same. They have very good high standards.
Yeah. Now, what about your experience in Egypt in general? Definitely, you must have visited some of the touristic sites. You've been living and dealing with Egyptians for years now. So would each of you individually tell me about her personal experience in Egypt and the places you've been to? Doctor, would you like to start?
I love Egypt. Nowadays, I feel very safe here and very stable, and I can relax. And also, I love the people of Egypt. They are very a lot of sense of humor, and I feel home here.
What about you, Doctor?
I love
What
Egypt
about your
too,
experience?
yes.
And where did you go, like that you enjoyed? Like, is it the touristic sites, the monuments, the antiquity sites, or is it places like Sharm el-Sheikh and the beaches? Which one?
Because I'm an archaeologist, I've been visited all the sites in Egypt. But first time when I started to live, I visited Sharm el-Sheikh. It's amazing. It's a shame I didn't know this place until really recently.
Okay, I have a question for you. From all the pieces that you're working on, what are your favorites?
My favorite for Tutankhamen is the loincloth, I would say, his underwear, because it's very personal. It used to be exhibited in the Egyptian Museum. Now it's in the GEMCC lab. And it is an amazing piece of underwear because it is made of very fine linen. And he also has underwear since he had a small child.
Yeah, Doctor, we will be having a quick break, but we'll continue talking to you after the break. So stay with us. We'll be back for more on Nile Cruise.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Before we went on a short break, we were talking to our guests about your favorite artifacts that you're working on. So, Doctor, would you please, you were talking about Tutankhamen.
The Tutankhamen had a huge wardrobe which was buried with him, and he had everything from his nemes, his head covering, to his underwear, to his tunics and socks. So he has a whole set of garments which will be displayed at the Grand Egyptian Museum. And my favorites are the underwear, the nemes, and the loincloth. And also he has amazing socks, which are fabricated with very, very fine linen. For example, we have counted the linen threads, and in one centimeter there are 60 linen threads, which means that it is very, very fine cloth.
What about you, Doctor?
Okay, the pieces now we are working on is wall painting from Old Kingdom. This is a very rare case that they did painting on mud brick, then plaster, and with colorful pigments, and the preservation is amazing. It's just amazing. So it should come to the light in the new museum. It's been not really exhibited well in the old museum. It was like one of the many objects, but I hope this will get some light in the new museum. It's really beautiful piece.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Akiko Nishisaka, the Conservation Planning Deputy Project Manager, and Dr. Mei Ishii, the Textile Artifacts Expert. Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you very much, ladies, and stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break.